I'm Matt Smith. Right now on Upfront, the historic U.S. Supreme Court decision. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is here.
We're going back to pre-Civil War, for God's sakes.
The impact unfolding right now, the calls to prepare for violence from his Republican challengers, and a battleground election now just months away.
Tony Evers needs to stand up to violent protesters.
Plus, the new polling on abortion in Wisconsin. Charles Franklin standing by with the new numbers and what it means ahead of the midterms. And his first television interview, the new head of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, Republican Don Millis, on the shakeup and the criticism from former Republicans that forced Dean Knutson out.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Smith. That historic U.S. Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion nationwide. This weekend, Wisconsin's 1849 law is in effect, banning abortions except if the mother's life is at risk. Governor Tony Evers called lawmakers into special session this past week to repeal the law. Republicans gavelled in and out in a matter of seconds. Governor Tony Evers joins us now from Madison. Governor, welcome back to Upfront.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Let's begin with this Supreme Court decision. Is your administration planning any immediate executive action?
We're going to do everything we can in my power, whether it's executive action or working with others on other opportunities to fight this as long and as hard as we can. This is really important. You think about what was done today to the women of Wisconsin and women of this country. Essentially, politicians now are in charge of their reproductive health. I mean, honest to God, how could anything be more scary for our women in the state of Wisconsin? But we're going to fight it, whatever ways we're doing. We're going to make sure that we get back to the place we've been for the last 50 years. We have essentially taken away rights that the women of Wisconsin have had for 50 years. It's a travesty.
So is some type of executive action on the table, and what would that look like?
Well, we're still working on that, Matt. We're reading through the decision, but obviously I have been a supporter of women's rights to control their own health care and not have Republican legislators do it. And so this is a big deal for our state. We're going back to pre-Civil War, for God's sakes, that when that was put in place. It's an archaic law. So we're looking at every option that's on the table.
The Attorney General, Josh Kaul, also saying his office is reviewing the decision at this hour and will release more information in the coming days. Will the administration join any potential litigation to challenge or attempt to stop the implementation of the law?
I hate to keep saying the same thing over and over again. We're going to do whatever we can, whether it's executive action, whether it's judicial action, you name it, we're going to be there.
Governor, your Republican opponents are warning of violence in wake of this decision. Rebecca Kleefisch said you must use every tool at your disposal to prevent domestic terrorism. Tim Michels is calling on you to raise the state's threat level and put the National Guard on notice. Are you considering any of that?
We're always in contact with law officials all across the state of Wisconsin. This is no different than any other issue. I'm sure people are going to voice their way, have voice on this issue. They should. But at the end of the day, I always say that violence doesn't solve any problems, and I anticipate that the people that do protest will do it peacefully.
Have you received any intelligence that there may be violence in the coming days across the state?
No, and we are in constant conversation with all the folks that would know that and have not heard that.
Republicans, Governor, as you well know, gavelled in and gavelled out of the special session you called on Wednesday. The Senate Majority Leader called your special session blatantly political and said Governor Evers and modern Democrats hold an extreme and apparent view on taking innocent life. If Tony Evers had his way, babies would be allowed to be killed up until the moment of birth. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, for the last 50 years, women have had this right. You think about it. It is their bodies. It is their decision. And suddenly we have Devin LeVenue and the Republicans in the legislature saying, we know better, and that's what we're going to do. Republicans now own those decisions. Horrible position. I mean, they don't insert themselves in a whole bunch of other areas, but they are now in charge of women's reproductive health. It is a travesty.
State Democrats this weekend are coming off of their party convention in La Crosse. You, of course, a headliner and a speaker there. How much of an issue is abortion now going to play ahead of the November elections, do you think?
It certainly is an issue that we're going to be talking about during this entire convention. But we have a lot of other things to talk about. Issue of voting rights. We just saw how Senator Johnson really tried to upend that just the other day when it was revealed that he is behind the scenes trying to undo voting in the state of Wisconsin. That is a slap in the face to every single local person, county clerks, our municipal clerks, the people that run the elections. So think that he could just do this and essentially kick in the backside all those people that are working every single day to have the safest and best and most secure and fair elections.
Governor, back in December 2020, when you and Democrats were meeting and certifying the official results, were you aware at that moment that Republicans were gathering just down the hall in the Capitol to do their own?
No, if I knew that, I would have went down there and told them to get the hell out of the Capitol.
You just found out later by news reports?
Right. No idea. I have no idea how they got in. I have no idea why they did what they did other than to, frankly, break the law. And no, if I had known, I would have went down there and stopped it personally.
Governor, before you go, this past week, President Biden called on not only Congress but states to suspend the gas tax because of historic gas prices. Are you considering any type of executive action to do so here in the state?
Well, first of all, I hope they do something in Washington, D.C. That's the first alternative. But then second of all, just to clarify that, if we did something different in the state of Wisconsin, and I am open to some of this, it has to be done legislatively. We have to pass a bill. And so if the legislators want to come in and talk about this, but my bottom line here is this, is that we use this money in order to fix our roads, and we're not going to sacrifice the safety of our roads and people driving on those roads. But it has to be temporary, and we have to be using the state budget surplus in order to pay for that. But if Republicans want to come in and start that discussion, have at it. I'm with them.
Governor, before you go with this, with historic gas prices, with rising inflation, historic levels of inflation, looking ahead to the fall elections, how do Democrats win with those two major factors impacting Americans and a Democratic president in the White House?
Absolutely, but I'll tell you, the people of Wisconsin are concerned. Obviously, they're concerned about inflation, and but they're also concerned about their public schools, making sure that their roads are safe, making sure they have good health care. All those things matter, and we're going to be talking about it. And actually, we're going to be talking about what we have done over the last 3.5 years.
Governor Tony Evers, Democratic governor of the state of Wisconsin. Governor, like always, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good day.
You too. Abortion in the state now set to dominate the race for governor this fall. Former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch, one of the GOP frontrunners, joins us now. Welcome back to Up Front.
Thanks for having me.
We just heard from the governor who called this a scary day for women in Wisconsin. Your reaction to that and the ruling from the Supreme Court?
Well, I think of the countless hundreds of thousands of unborn women that Tony Evers does not speak for. And I'm baffled at the fact how this one man believes that he speaks for the women of Wisconsin, because I'm not a biologist, but I am a woman, and Tony Evers does not speak for me. In fact, what this was is a tremendous victory for the unborn, the voiceless among us. And the fact that Tony Evers had the audacity to call this reproductive health is shocking to me, because ending a life is not health care.
This now hands control to the states. As you know, some Republicans in the legislature have said they're open to adding rape and incest as exceptions to Wisconsin's current law. Would you sign that into law as governor?
Right now, I am standing with the 1849 law that includes the exception for the health of the mother.
So you would not support adding rape or incest?
I'm going to stand with the 1849 law that includes the exception for the health of the mother and allow healthcare professionals and moms to determine what that actually looks like.
As you know, on the flip side of that, there are other Republicans who are calling for that exception to be removed from the state law. Do you support that?
No, I think we stay with the 1849 law as it stands, which includes the exception for the life of the mother.
Before the decision came out, you tweeted that you wanted the governor to take every action and every tool at his disposal to prevent domestic terrorism in wake of this. What were you referring to?
I was referring to the firebombing at Wisconsin Family Action's offices. I was referring to the disaster and nightmare where $50 million went up in smoke and 2 men died in Kenosha. I was referring to the nightmare where you saw the attempted firebombing of the city county building in Madison and cop cars burned, statues torn down and thrown in the lake. I am referring to Tony Evers' weak and failed leadership when it comes to protecting the people of Wisconsin.
Were you referring to any of the protesters and attempting to call them domestic terrorists?
When you firebomb and threaten the lives of people, when people die, 100%, that is domestic terror. And as your governor, I would assure that violence would never be the answer, and we would have the resources ready and marshaled to protect the people of Wisconsin.
To take on the governor, you must first win the primary in August. The new Marquette poll has you head-to-head with Tim Michels. It appears he's gaining some momentum. What do you make of that, and what does that say about your campaign where it sits today?
Well, Tim Michels has millions of dollars to spend because he's lobbied for years to raise the gas tax in the state of Wisconsin, which is ironic that today we're paying $5.19 a gallon for gasoline. And here a man running as a Republican has lobbied for years, not only against us on prevailing wage reform and against us on right to work, but for the exact same thing that Tony Evers stands for, indexing the gas tax to inflation, which would cost almost 40% more in tax at the pump. You name me one Wisconsinite who can afford that. I'll tell you, gas tax Tim Michels cannot lead any sort of conservative administration when he stands for raising the gas tax so he can continue to line his pockets and the pockets of his buddies in the road builders.
Republican Governor for candidate Rebecca Kleefisch, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it like always.
My pleasure.
Charles Franklin is standing by the polling on abortion and what it means ahead of the midterms. But first, the new chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, Don Millis, standing by, his new role, his return to the commission, and the calls from fellow Republicans to blow it up.